This is the dissection of the sheep's heart by Cynthia Allen. Okay, the visceral pericardium is basically the area on the outside of the heart. The apex is, this is the apex of the heart, which is the base of the heart. All right, so the right atrium has the blood that goes into the right ventricle, which is deoxygenated blood. And the left atrium has blood that goes into the left ventricle, which is oxygenated blood. The right and left auricles are used to squeeze the blood into the atrium and into the ventricles. This pouch right up here, this cone-shaped pouch, is a muscular pouch where blood collects and it gets squeezed into the right atrium, which goes into the right ventricle. For the left side, the pouch sits up here. And it gets squeezed into there. The interventricular sulcus is a major blood vessel that's found on the sulcus, which is this right here, which is this groove right here. And the coronary artery actually goes into this and it branches off. It's divided into two major branches, the anterior interventricular artery and the anterior ventricular sulcus. These arteries supply blood and oxygen to the anterior walls of both the ventricles and the interventricular septum. The circumflex artery, it distributes blood and oxygen to the posterior walls of the left ventricle and the left atrium. The right coronary artery runs below the right atrium and divides to form two major branches. They supply blood to the oxygen or to the posterior walls of both the ventricles. The marginal artery supplies blood and oxygen to the lateral walls of the right ventricle and the right atrium. And after the blood passes through the arteries, the blood enters the capillaries where it delivers oxygen and nutrients to the myocardium and picks up carbon dioxide and wastes. And then the deoxygenated blood is collected by the three major cardiac veins, which is the great cardiac vein, the middle cardiac vein, and the small cardiac vein. And that's this little sulcus. The pulmonary trunk is located right here in the front of the, looks like mine has been cut. Alright, so this right here is the pulmonary trunk. It's it's the front of the heart. Behind it is the aortic valve, or I'm sorry, the aortic artery. So here we have this right here is the pulmonary artery. This right here is where my finger is the aorta. Where the spatula is coming out from is the brachial cephalic artery. And then I'm going to show you the superior vena cava, I believe, is right here. And the pulmonary vein right there. Blood that's going into the pulmonary trunk is actually going to the lungs, and it's deoxygenated. And the blood going into the aorta is going to arteries, and it's oxygenated. The ascending aorta would be going down this way, and you can't see it, but there would be it'd be like an arch going down in there. It'd be ascending, and then the descending going down. I believe this might be part of the arch there. We cut it. There's three major vessels in the aortic arch, and that's the brachiocephalic, so that would be that one. The left common carotid and the left subclavian, which I believe were cut off. I cannot see them unless they're underneath all this. And the pulmonary circuit has the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the coronary sinus, which these are three vessels that go into the heart chamber. It goes into the tricuspid valve, which is in here, and it's held together by superior vena cava is going to be above the right atrium, so it would be, that's the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava, this is the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava would be, of course, below it. The blood from these three vessels go into the tricuspid valve, which is in the right ventricle. So the tricuspid valve is actually in there, in the right ventricle. And these vessels are actually veins that go into the tricuspid valve. The three mentioned prior, the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the coronary sinus are all veins that go into here. So they're bringing back deoxygenated blood. So the right ventricle basically gets all the deoxygenated blood, and then it gets pumped. All right, so now we're going to talk about the inside, more about, these structures in here. All right, so the pectomy is in the inner wall of the ventricle, or I'm sorry, the atrium. Inner wall of the atrium. And the myocardium is this, basically this in here. The left ventricle has a thicker myocardium because it basically creates a lot of pressure to pump the blood into the aorta. So the blood from the left ventricle is oxygenated blood. So this blood gets pumped into the aorta and goes into the circulatory system. So it needs a lot of muscle to do that. The left ventricle is, the right ventricle has the deoxygenated blood, and then this gets goes into the pulmonary circuit to get reoxygenated. When it comes back into the left ventricle. The left ventricle needs all this muscle power to push it through the aorta so that the arteries, which are rich in oxygenated blood, can pump it into the rest of the body. That is why this is a lot thicker than the right ventricle. Alright, so the inner surface of the ventricles. So let's see if I can find. So this right here would be the tuberculate carne. This right here. The tuberculate carne. And the interventricular septum. Right here. This is the interventricular septum. It's between the two, the right and the left ventricle. The bicuspid mitral, or the left AV valve, that is going to be located, would be right here. This is the bicuspid valve. Actually, this would be the aorta semilunar valve is right here. And then this is it right here. I think I cut into it. This would be the, it'd be right here. So you got the bicuspid and the semilunar valve. The tricuspid is coming back over here. The tricuspid is in here, and it has 3 cusps. So it's kind of like it's kind of like a peace sign, the way that it looks, and basically it's the blood that's what kind of opens and closes to let the blood in and out. The chordae tendineae is basically these cords